the Bare-knuckled Faith podcast. Disruption is about religion and spirituality in this in-between time. And by that I mean a much bigger context than Trump and the awful turn the United States has taken. We're living in a time, and we have been for decades now, when little is like it was, but not yet what it will be. Change is so rapid, demographics and climate so unpredictable, and information so atomized that we don't really know what has happened nor what's about to take place. Pascal wrote about the penultimate. For him, the world, that word meant that everything we know and do or can think, feel, or have is less than ultimate. We should never hold on to or cherish something as ultimate when God and eternity are the actual ultimate. So in this context, we must be wise enough to understand that nothing within our field of vision and knowledge is the last word. It will change. We will change. The world as we know it will change. But due to technology and historical events, almost everything has been changing more rapidly than we can integrate or reconcile with our slower processing abilities. Our lives have been disrupted. Our sense of reality has been disrupted. Our believing and thinking and relationships have been disrupted. So I wanted to stop the wagon for a moment and just process what this means for religion and spirituality. More particularly, how we can navigate these times with a reshaped spiritual practice. As always, I welcome your comments because God knows I am no expert. As with my sermons, I invite you to use this to stimulate your own thinking and imagination. Don't get hung up on what something I say or neglect to say. Rather, allow the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be yeast for the rising of your own. Welcome back. Has your religion been disrupted? How about your spirituality? What is the difference between religion and spirituality anyway? Well, let's start with smart and lofty thinkers like Houston Smith. He thinks that religion is more than the traditional doctrines and dogmas and institutions that have held them throughout history. To Smith, religion addresses existential human questions such as our purpose and our meaning, our own lives, the purpose and meaning of our own lives, and life writ large. Also, and deeply important, religion provides a sense of belonging to a community and of something that's bigger than ourselves. Fred Buechner leans into the more mystical aspect of religion. Being Christian for him is all about transformation. This is a passage from The Magnificent Defeat. And if you don't know the writings of and thoughts of Fred Buechner, I encourage you to pick up one of his books. A Christian, Buechner says, a Christian is one who has seen the tiger. Not the soulful-eyed, sugar-sweet, brilliantine Christ of terrible pictures that one can buy. But this explosion of a man, this explosion of life itself into life, we look at him. We glance up from our grazing for a moment, and there he stands. And suddenly we see what a tiger looks like, what a human being really looks like. And if we thought that our goathood was a problem before, our own half-baked, cockeyed humanity, we reach the point here, if we look hard, where the contrast becomes so painful that one or the other of us simply has to go. Either we crucify the tiger just to escape his terrible gaze, or we at least risk the crucifixion of our own goathood, which must go if it is to be replaced by tigerhood. In either case, our first cry when we see him is a cry of woe. If this is what it really means to be human, then what am I? If this is true life, then what is this that I'm living? That was big there. Then, of course, there's Webster's dictionary definition. It's more pedestrian, but also more what I suspect most of us think about religion than Buechner's or Smith's definitions. Webster says religion is an organized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. The religious beliefs, observances, and social practices found within a given cultural context. Well, we all know what religion has been, we just are not sure what it is anymore. Whether Christian or Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, or Buddhist, religious nationalism and religious fundamentalist thinking seems so other-century. It is impossible to look at and listen to the militant partisans of any religion and not feel some existential disconnect. It's like you're watching someone who has been historically dislocated and doesn't know it. How could their perspective on reality be so utterly different from our own? It's mind-boggling, really. Well, religion is a prescriptive lens, and through it we see ourselves, our family, our friends, and neighbors, and the whole world around us. It tells us who we are, and what we are, and why we are, and whose we are, in a way that defines and gives meaning to our lives. Religious lenses used to be fitted on us by strong, monolithic, historic institutions and cultural homogeneity. They had enough social and political power to regulate the boundaries of our thoughts and lifestyles. In some countries and cultures, perhaps it still does. But the place and the power of religion has been disrupted for most of us. These days, religion is much smaller. For all practical purposes, religion is a place we go to sometimes, to be with people who self-congregate with like-minded people. If we are told what to think and what to believe when we go there, that's just the price of admission. We shake it off and leave it behind when we exit, or we use it as a justification for doing and thinking what we would anyway. In our world, at least in the United States, religion is an institution, and the idea It's an institution and an idea that's out there among all the many other institutions and ideas. It's something we may or may not participate in, but less defining of our lives than it might have been decades or centuries ago. More influential is the school we go to or went to, what neighborhood we live in, where we are from, what news and information sources we consume. Religion and its place in our lives and culture has been disrupted. Science and political ideology are far more influential these days. But even more so, the culture and systems of capitalism are a far stronger lens on reality than anything else we have. We see the world and life through the filter of economics, consumption, possession, and opportunity. The cultures of capitalism, style, level of affluence and deprivation, and what kind of consumer we are in our relationship to the stock market, all that has replaced religion as our primary lens. Now, this change began happening many years ago, perhaps decades ago. Subversive Preacher has been posting reflections in one way or another since 2012. And the tagline, "Surfing the Web on a Wave of Religionless Christianity," has been there from the beginning. I stole that phrase, religionless Christianity, from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, so I chuckle to see that others have since taken it up on their own. Now, I first encountered Bonhoeffer when reading letters and papers from prison when I was in college. And I was amazed to read his earlier writings then that were far more innocent and evangelical than letters and papers from prison. But then Hitler, the Holocaust, and his imprisonment and eventual martyrdom transformed his innocence to understanding. In prison, he wrote about a Christianity come of age, by which he meant post-Holocaust Christianity or post-Holocaust theology. He understood the disruption the Holocaust would bring to Christianity. What does it say about a religion that can be and was used to support and uphold the Third Reich? Surely, Bonhoeffer mused from his prison cell, Christianity would finally change. It must, he thought, come to terms with its own willful bigotry and racism, corruption, innate violence, bizarre literalism, and institutional hierarchical excess. But as we see today in 21st century America, Christian nationalism is alive and flourishing once again, or still. Christianity has not come of age. We have not matured, in other words. There was a strong effort by some late 20th century scholars and theologians to make that happen. Walter Brueggemann, Marcus Borg, and John Dominic Crossan, to name a few. But they were eaten up by capitalist Christianity, which is rooted in the culture and strategic methods of consumerism. The liberal mainline traditions that might have been torchbearers weren't. They were slow to adapt, and instead they hung their arms around historic ideas and ethnic customs for music and worship. They still haven't grasped the radical intervention that needs to take place in Christian theology. Now, they simply limp along, hoping for the best while being overwhelmed by the cultural prominence of conservative evangelicals and fundamentalists. Christian nationalism has won the war of theological change, and so instead of coming of age, Christianity is moving rather into another one of its childhoods. All of which causes folks like you and me to let go of religion, if not completely, then to reduce its presence in our lives. Enter Jesus and the Gospels. Fortunately, they are an antique vase holding and protecting ancient spirituality. They're not dead or defeated. They cannot be silenced by the violent and bloodthirsty ogres of Christian nationalism. Even if we haven't studied them in detail, we know intuitively that Jesus and the Gospels offer us what we're looking for. John the Baptist and Jesus of Nazareth were partisans and leaders of a disruption of the institutional religion in their own day. That religion, centered in the temple and owned by a privileged class of clergy and social patriarchs, had parallels with the institutional and consumeristic Christianity of our own time. Through John's and Jesus's reform movements, we get hints of how to practice an ancient spirituality today in the 21st century, not in some odd anachronistic way, but currently, presently, in the moment. Gospel spirituality is a progressive lens. It begins with understanding that faith is not a set of beliefs. It's not even a belief system. Faith is not a set of doctrines and dogmas. That's religion. Faith is experiential. We live it, or we don't. Period. In other words, faith is incarnate in how we live our lives. What we do, how we live, how we love, what choices we make when we have choices. These imbue us with holiness or not. But please hear me now. This is not some new moralism in which there is a rigid matrix of right and wrong that we must live by or be damned. That's religion, not spirituality. Spirituality is a practice that transforms us and empowers us to live faith, to be faith. To be faith. One of the ancient Hebrew notions of faith is literally to hold on to. To hold on to God. Here's a poem I wrote that evokes that idea. It's a reflection on Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 through 28. And this poem is found in my most recent book, Last Will and Testament. It's entitled Parable, and it goes like this. One man lashed himself to a tree, looping an anaconda-thick rope around the oldest oak. He pulled tight to gird his waist, looking down at the tree's gnarly feet, plunging into hardened soil. He was pleased to imagine those spindly toes gripping the earth while above fat branches hugged the sky. It would give no ground in the coming storm. Another man lingered unmoored. He rocked back and forth on the porch, waiting for the tempest to arrive. Waves came crawling up the planks. Fingers of death soon clawed his chair. He rose calmly, like the eye curled within the unfettered wind. Perched for flight upon the railing of his porch, he dove head first into the mouth of the storm, disappearing between the white teeth of the ocean. The tsunami unrolled an obliterating tongue, licking away man and tree, house and porch, tower and boat, concrete and steel. The man who trusted a tree to save his life was never found. The man who knew nothing would save him washed ashore, battered and broken, scarred and crippled for life. experience the presence of God or not. We experience God or not. It doesn't matter whether it's a hot, flashing Pentecostal explosion or an intellectual concept that momentarily breaks open our old thoughts and assumptions. Faith is a momentary experience or experiences of God that we hold on to and allow to change what we think, what we do, and even who we are. God is experiential. Our theology and doctrines and beliefs simply do not capture, define, or explain the creator of all that is. God is an experience that changes what we do and how we live. So we do faith. Maybe even we are faith or not. It is 1,000 small choices and actions that interact with the thousands of choices and actions of people we are in community with. In all of that, God is manifest. In our incarnate faith, embodied faith, God is incarnate. God is embodied. So that's the first thing in our reflection on spiritual practice. Faith is a verb, and God is incarnate in our verbness. Our verbness. So come back next time. Next episode, we will look at elements of Christian spiritual practice that we can embody inside and outside of organized religion. Appreciate you coming back. And as always, I wish you peace.